You see in the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
All right. So good morning. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully you are having a good start to your week. You know, we've been spending a lot of time together between yesterday with EduClimber and then this morning. Just trying to give you all the tools and resources and things you need to be more efficient in your role. So this morning we are going to discuss paperwork and what's a WSGA. And I put WSGA there because the WSGA is a written summary of all of the paperwork and stuff that you did. So it's kind of like the finishing document after you've completed all the paperwork. So that's why I highlighted that form. Just like last week, I'm going to go ahead and briefly go through my PowerPoint. And then as I go over the forms, then I have no problem if you want to jump in, ask questions, put something in the chat, because I want to make sure that as I'm going over it, you're understanding it. So, but I'm just going to briefly go over some things with the PowerPoint, and then we'll move over to paperwork stuff. Okay. So first, I want to make sure that you all know where you can find all of the forms. We have several different places. Obviously, the Focus SSS tab should have an academic and a behavior MTSS tab. That is where you will find the majority of the paperwork that you need for packets, okay? For students that are being evaluated for academic disabilities and then also for behavior. And then also the curriculum instruction icon and class link. And I'm going to show you these, but I have little pictures there. Okay, if you don't have those, then you're going to, and I'm going to ask my wonderful assistant to type it in the chat. Connie Capola, you're an admin, right, Krista? So you can just email and ask for that. I believe you're an AP. For those of you that aren't, your admin needs to request access for you to have that SSS, the MTSS profile in Focus. Okay. Our district resource teams page will have forms, and then obviously EduClimber, we have begun to create. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. I gave you a promotion. So EduClimber, Dr. Maddox has created some amazing smart forms in there to help make a lot of what you all have to do easier. Okay. Then just some of the paperwork differences we went over last week about the different evals. We have concurrent eval and then the tier 3 consents. So some of the differences with a concurrent, the packet paperwork is done after the consent is signed, because just because you have a concurrent meeting doesn't necessarily mean that consent is going to be signed. So we don't want to do a lot of stuff up front if not needed. But when it's a tier 3, when it's the school that's recommending an evaluation, we need to have everything done. We need to have done our due diligence, because we are asking, basically saying that we feel like your child has a learning disability. So we need to be very ethical when we do that and say these are all of the things that we've done before we ask for that consent. Concurrent meeting notes are what's used. And then a tier 3 initial worksheet is what's completed for tier 3 consents. WSGA is completed after the consent meeting, and then the second page of the WSGA is completed at the consent meeting. Okay, just some differences. And then some of the similarities, as you can see there, just checklist for referral for evaluation is done. Vision and hearing forms are done. That MTSS tier 3 review meeting worksheet is done for both, and I'm going to show you that, even though one is a concurrent evaluation and the other is a tier 3. Classroom observations, parent data form, records review, WSGA, and the peer and prior written notice are all done. All right, so now we're just going to jump right in, okay? And show of hands, if you did not know that there was a checklist for all the paperwork. You don't have to really put your hands up because a lot of you aren't showing your faces anyways, but so there is a checklist. Thank you, Krista. Are you being very creative or do you have questions? I guess I kind of walked myself into that one. Okay, Sharon, oh, okay, I see why you're asking that. I can show you all how to see that, okay? You have access to it. It's on the demographic page, the student's demographic page. But, all right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. So this is the curriculum instruction tab that has a lot of the paper copy forms. You see it right here. You scroll down to the MTSS tab. And then there's a handbook. And then a bunch of different tabs here. So we're going to go to academics, and that's where you'll find hard copies of the packet paperwork. Okay. And then in here, the checklist for evaluation.
I'll say for the handbook, it sends you to the PSRTI site, and we use the state handbook is available there, but we no longer maintain an Osceola handbook.
Correct. Thank you, sir. Okay. So as you can see here, pretty much everything on this will always need to be completed regardless of whether you're doing a concurrent or a tier 3. So we're just going to go right over into focus. Our little Mickey Mouse over here. And Sharon, I'll show you where you find that right now. So if they have this little icon here, health services opt out, if you click on it, it's going to take you to the demographic page. Then you can scroll down, scroll up. And if there is a green check mark, it means that they have opted out. Now, I will say this. What we're finding is that a lot of the parents are filling this out incorrectly. They're thinking that they're opting in and not opting out. So if you do have a student that you need to do a vision or hearing screening on, and there's green check marks there, just call the parent and make sure that that's what they meant to do. Like I said, we are fine. The counselors are having to do this, especially with Panorama going on. And they're finding that the parents, they just need to get to what they need to get to in the parent portal, and they're just filling it out and not really paying attention. So if they do need to fix something, they have to go in and fill out the form a second time, and then your data entry has to correct it. But what I would say is document that you spoke to the parent, they opted out in error, and then go ahead and proceed with the screenings or whatever we need, because there's also school psychologist observations and things like that on here. So just double check with the parent.
Yeah, I don't have that on my screen. When I go to demographics, I don't see all those options to see what they marked for opting out.
Hey, Sharon, can you go to the home page of Focus?
Yes, I'm going
and
there.
In the top left next to where it says welcome Sharon Matthews, do you see a drop down?
Hold on, I'm going to log in. Yes.
Okay, when you click that, what roles do you see? It should say portal dash.
Attendance, academic coach, MTSS, and MTSS coach.
Okay, click portal MTSS. And now try searching for the student again and see if you see it.
No, I don't see it.
But you're still not seeing those hearing screening, whatever, mental health.
Neither
No.
do I. Neither
Okay.
do I, and I have MTSS as well.
Okay, I will put in a request to get that added to the profile.
Thank you.
All right, good questions. These are good. I'm glad that Dave is with us. And once you do have that, that's how you're going to
Oh, you still there, Danielle?
I am. I just got someone. Just give me a second. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. So we're going to go to his SSS page. And you should have academic and behavior. So from here, you will see, scroll down past charter. The concurrent meeting notes are right here. Click on that, initiate the event. And then I'm guessing that many of you have already done this. You just let this form guide the conversation. You have to print it, have parents sign, and then you upload the signed copy. I'll show you what a tier 3. So this is when you're going to use this form when it's a school kind of figuring out if we need to move a student into tier 3 that we feel like we need to evaluate. All of this paperwork, we don't want you to do extra work at all. You're doing this, what's on this referral for checklist, if you are evaluating a student, whether for concurrent or it's something that the school is wanting to do. Other than that, there isn't any other tier 2 paperwork that needs to be done. Now, especially with EduClimber, we have great ways of documenting the interventions that the students are in, their attendance, all of those pieces are going to be done in there. So it eliminates you having to do anything, collect any spreadsheets, attendance sheets, all of those things. So you're only doing these things if you're evaluating a student. Okay. So we as a school, we're going over some data and we have some concerns about a student. We want to put them in tier 3 because we feel like this is something that may eventually go to an eval. So we want, again, to start documenting our why. Why are we feeling this way about a student? So we're going to complete these things. And I'm almost going to assume or guess that this probably could eventually be put in EduClimber because of the way it pulls in data. But this gap analysis is the real important part because this is where you're going to put what the student's level is and whether you're using NWEA, NSGRA, whatever data set that you have that compares to students in their whole grade level. Okay, whenever we're doing this, whenever we're looking to see if a student has a specific learning disability, it's based on where they're at compared to their peers. Okay, so where the student level should be, where they are, where their peers are, and then what's the expected level. I know throughout the school year, the levels change as far as where students should be on those assessments. And then down here, you're going to put the peer level, student level, you're going to do the math and find out what the difference is, what the gap is between the peer and the student, the expected and the student, and the expected and the peer level. And this is really super eye-opening because you can see, I've sat in MTSS meetings where they're problem solving and looking at students where they thought that they were really low. And then after they do this gap analysis, they're like, oh, you know what? They're really not that far off. So let's just continue with what we're doing, maybe ramp up the intervention and then come back to it. Or they're like, wow, okay. This is a great tool as well, because now that we've switched the way we're doing concurrence, if a student is receiving tier 3 and, or maybe we as a school miss putting them in there, but they are struggling, do this gap analysis and see, okay, yeah, you know what, we do need to put them into tier 3 and get them that intensive intervention. It's a really great tool and it's pretty quick. Then you want to put your hypothesis.
Okay, Danielle,
Yes.
before you continue on, we do have a
Yes.
question here from Krista. When do we fill this out? Do we do this for every student whenever they're placed in tier 3?
We do not. Again, this is when you as a school are kind of struggling to figure out what's going on with a student, right? Maybe they have been receiving tier 3 and we feel like maybe they should be doing better, or they're in tier 2 and they're not doing well. It's a tool for you to figure out, do we need to move the student on for evaluation? Okay. So think of that bottom set of kids that we're trying to figure out how to best help them, how to make sure that they're in the right intervention. This is a tool to help you with that. You do not need to do this. Please hear me well. You do not need to do this with all of your kids. You will be doing this all day, every day now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
personally think of this like if there were a tier 4, this is the conversation we would be having. Would this kid go there?
I love that. I love that. All right. And then the reason for the problem, we always want to make sure that we're assessing that properly. What's the hypothesis? Is it the instruction, the curriculum, the environment? We know that sometimes that has a big impact on whether students are learning. Or is it something with the learner? And then you're going to put a specific, measurable, attainable, a goal. What's the goal for the intervention? Where do we want them? What are we trying to get them to be at level wise? And then what's the intervention? And then if you have more than one, you just put it there, okay? And this is a pretty lengthy document. That's why, again, we're not asking you to fill it out for every kid that you put in tier 3. But like Dr. Maddox said, I like that tier 4, where we're just really trying to drill down and figure out how best to help a student. Okay. And then that tier 3 review meeting. This is now, us as a school has decided that a student, we want to ask parents to come in and sign consent. We suspect that their child has some sort of learning disability, and we want to present to them our why. So the date of the meeting, tier 2, tier 3. Now, the reason why that has that there, because sometimes when you're doing, remember, this form gets filled out for both concurrent and tier 3. Sometimes concurrent meetings, the student's only in tier 1 or tier 2. Okay. But so we're going to put that, fill in all the information, their gradebook grades. And then right here is where you're now as a school, you should already know going into this that their response to the intervention was poor. Okay, we're not asking parents to sign consent because the student is doing very well. But this, everyone on board, including the parents, after you show them the data, explain to them all that you've done, hopefully they're going to see this and feel the same way, that their response to the intervention was poor. Okay, and then based on the progress monitoring, all that, you're just going to put what was the decision, and then everybody at the table signs. Okay, this one is a little bit easier to get through. Any questions on those? Once you do it 1 or 2 times, you'll see it's. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go out to the curriculum instruction tab. Show you some of the other forms. I mean, we'll get to the WSGA, I promise. It's the finale. Of course, it wants to act up. All right, here we go. So on the referral for evaluation checklist, we have the other documentation needed. So parent conference notes. You need. Now this form is just an idea. You don't necessarily have to use this because hopefully, especially if it's the school that's recommending an evaluation, there has been somewhere along the way, we've had conversations with parents letting them know that we have concerns with their student. So you can find that in student documentation. If a teacher has documented a parent conference, sometimes teachers keep their own set of notes. You can get a copy of that. If you have talked to the parent, you can quick fill this out based on that conversation. This is nothing too in-depth. It's just letting us know that we have had at least 2 conversations with the parent. Now, if it was a concurrent meeting, the concurrent meeting could be one of those. So don't stress this. Don't reinvent the wheel. You just need to have documented that there were at least 2 conversations with the parent regarding the academic or behavior concern. Okay. Then the next thing, we need observations. Okay, if you're doing a FUBA bit, which is for behavior, you're going to have plenty of observations. Okay, and those are more of the you're going in and an antecedent behavior and consequence type of observations. Those are going to be a little bit more in depth because we want to see why the behavior is happening, what's happening after, what's happening before, those types of maybe a narrative observation. But for specific learning disability, you only need to have 2 of these. Classroom teacher does one, and then maybe somebody else on your leadership team, problem solving team can go in and just, I know it says on the top classroom teacher only, but we need one from the teacher. If they have multiple teachers, that's great. But this is just a quick little checklist as to some of the behaviors and academic concerns that may be seen. Okay, so 2 of those for SLD. Now we have the parent data form. We need info from the parents, right? We definitely want to make sure that we're getting their input. So there's already one open on this little guy. Yep. And a key to this, we know how great we send things home and they always come back, right? Parents are always sending forms back, things that we need. So my suggestion for this is, especially if it's a concurrent, they're going to be there. Do it when the parent's in front of you. You can either read the questions, print it out, have them fill it out, whatever is easier, just do it while they're there. That way you're not scrambling later to try to get the form back, okay? You could do it over the phone with them. However it needs to be done, but I would kind of stay away from sending it home and waiting for it to come back. And then the records review, which that is amazing. See, I've had this black bar. Oh, there it goes. It went away. So We know that we have the Great Creation and EduClimber. Oh, and I realized, okay, this is being recorded, so I think by now you should all know how to get to it, how to create one. If you need to create one, you're going to click this new form template, choose the one that you want, choose the record review, put your student, choose your student, form name RR. If you want to create a folder, which I think is a great idea to sort all of the forms that you're going to be creating, create a record review folder. And then we now know that it's live. So if I create this today on a student, when I need it, or if I need to use it later on, it's going to have updated information, which is amazing. Okay. So we need that records review. And then our tier 3 graph data, which was what we were talking about with making sure, especially starting with those kids that are being evaluated either through a concurrent or a tier 3, if they're in tier 3 interventions for a concurrent, we want to start collecting that weekly progress monitoring data. And I think if you just start with those kids, you'll see that it'll be a little bit easier to get that buy-in. And we're not creating a whole separate time that the teacher has to have the students on a Friday. The teachers having those students for an intervention time anyways. So the beginning of that intervention time is just doing that quick progress monitoring. We now have it in School City for those specific areas. The assessments are in there, making it super, I mean, I say super easy. I know the logistics at the schools. I've been out. I know things are really hectic right now. So I'm not trying to dismiss what's the reality of the situation by saying that something is super easy, but the things that have been created will make things easier to be done in order to get this data. So we need tier 3 graph data. You need attendance for the school year, which we know how to pull that. And then intervention attendance data, which I know teachers will hopefully start to do that soon. But we need to make sure that we can show that the student was or was not attending their interventions, because that could be a factor in them not qualifying. Obviously, we can't say that a student has a disability if they missed 70% of the intervention time. So it's really important, and it's really important too that if you as a school are feeling like we need to evaluate a student, that you have that conversation with the parent or the guardian and you say, we're going to be providing interventions for your student. They have a gap in this area of their learning, and it's really, really important that they're there for these interventions. So you're having obviously that conversation prior to the consent meeting. Okay, and then the referral for evaluation, which is that where you put document the vision and hearing. Can any of you tell me, are the nurses, do they have the equipment back for the hearing? I know it was still being calibrated.
Ours got it back this week.
Perfect. Okay. And you can use, if a parent take their student, most parents take their kids for a yearly physical. The vision and hearing results are good for up to a year. So if the parent already has that, that's one less thing that you have to bother your nurse for. Still being calibrated. Okay. So little by little it's coming back. And we know that we can't, regardless of whether we have vision and hearing, we still have to get consent for concurrence if a parent is requesting it. If it's the school, let's have this in place before you sit down a parent for consent. Okay. So this form filled out, sent. And then now we're going to move over to the WSGA. So before I do that, any questions so far? So here is the WSGA. So when it's a concurrent, obviously you're going to do this after and you're going to see why we went through all the paperwork first. The meeting date is going to be the meeting date that you had the concurrent. If it's a tier 3, the meeting that the date that tier 3 meeting is happening. Okay, demographic information of the student, what are the areas of concern, academic or behavior. If it's academic, is it reading, math, language, all that just kind of goes there. Then the general benchmark. So if it's reading, where at this time, what's the general benchmark? Where should that student be at this time in the school year? Okay, and then what are the targeted skills that we're working on? Here you have that parent contact. So you see how now all these things, those other forms are starting to come into play. It says 3, you only need to document 2. If you have 3, that's not going to hurt. Okay. Name and date, and you're just putting for the parent contact the date that happened. If you want to put the date and who contacted the parent, that's fine too. The name and date here, the date should correlate with the meeting date, who's in the meeting. And then we had those observations coming from the that observation checklist. If you remember what it looked like, it had an academic side and a behavior side. You're just gonna put here, if any of the behaviors were checked, just type a few in there, any of the academic. If you have, now you have 2 for SLD, but you don't have to repeat, phonics skills. So observation 1, when date was it done, observation 2, and then just fill in right from that checklist. What if the parent then has contacted the student? Yes, yeah, that's fine. Any type of parent contact where there's a discussion about an academic or behavior concern, yes, that's fine. Educationally relevant medical findings, that would be, do they have other diagnosis? Is there something else that this student, do they have a healthcare plan, things like that. Sensory screening, that's where you're just going to put the results of the vision and hearing, the date that they were done, and whether they passed. And then diagnostic assessments. That would be what tool did you use to kind of drill down to what specific area of intervention the student needed. What I used to put there, because there should be something that, like a report that you can print, see attached diagnostic report. You don't need to fill this all in with all of the things, just see attached diagnostic report. Okay, and then this. Core, targeted, intensive. This you're filling out, your core is your tier 1. And this can stay the same, obviously, for any student because everybody's getting the same tier 1. So what is the core curriculum? Back in the day for me, it was Journeys. I don't know. What is the reading curriculum? Changes.
Benchmark Advanced.
Benchmark. Okay. So you would put benchmark. Implementer is the teacher. Duration is daily for 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. And then for fidelity and support, admin walkthroughs, and then coach assistance. Something as basic as that is fine, okay? And then how are they doing in that? If it's you as a school that's recommending an eval, the minus sign should be checked. Then targeted is your tier 2. What is the student getting for tier 2? What's the program? Who's doing it? How often? And then you can continue with that same fidelity and support, admin walkthroughs, instructional coach support. And then intensive is your tier 3. What are they getting? Who's giving it? How often? And then the supports. So when it's a concurrent, this will be filled out for just whatever level that student is receiving. They may stop at tier 1. It's happened in the past. tier 2, and then how they're doing is, it could be questionable, they could be doing great, just that the parent really wants an eval on their child. I have, and I will put, when I put the recording and everything, I have a copy of this WSGA that are samples. So I have these things already filled out for you. When you're in a tier 3 consent meeting, this is you're gonna wait, like you'll have all this filled in, but you're gonna wait to check the response, because again, you're doing that as the whole team with the parent, because I'm showing you the data. This is in tier 1. How do we feel they did? Okay, they're not doing so great in tier 1. This is our tier 2. How do you think they're? No, not so great. Okay, and tier 3, you're showing them that tier 3 progress monitoring data. You're talking to them about where they are in comparison to their peers. Yeah, no, they're not doing so great. You're right. Let's move forward with an eval. So now we're doing the consent and the prior written notice and peer, and then the statement of need. Your school psychologist will help you with this part, because the statement of need, and this is very important that it gets filled out properly, is whatever testing they're doing, whether it's academics or IQ, is going to go here. And then with the phrase, and again, I'll give you the sample that has it already written, any testing deemed necessary. And what that does is it allows the school psychologist, if they're only looking at academics, but they feel like as they're doing the testing, oh, you know what, maybe we do need to do an IQ. It allows them to do that, even though the IQ isn't put on here. IQ testing. Okay, makes sense? Let me stop for a second. Do we complete page 2 at the meeting or before? So you can fill it in, obviously what they're getting, but as far as the response, that you're going to do with the group. Yes, Krista.
Hey, I just want to clarify. So part of this paperwork is filled out. So the parent or the team has decided, we need to discuss this kid with the parent. So part of the information is filled out prior to meeting face-to-face with the parent, right? Like all of the background information is filled out. Then part of it is filled out in the meeting as the team is discussing with the parent the current status of the student.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so then at the end of that meeting, we'll make a determination. Are we going to move forward with a possible evaluation for ESE, or are we changing tiers, or are the tiers currently working? Is that correct?
Yes. 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. And I apologize. This is kind of my first time with all of this, so I just want to make sure I'm covering all the bases.
No, don't apologize at all. That's a great question, right? Because even we could have rock solid data as a school. A lot of times parents they're weary about putting that label on their student, and it's really understandable, right? But that's why you're going to have your RCS there, people to explain what supports they can get through ESE. You're going to have a whole team there to kind of help the parent see, but even sometimes you'll have rock solid evidence that this is what they need, and the parent will still say no. So then what do we need to do? Then we do need to continue to support the student, and then see if we revisit this in a month and it's still really poor, can we try now? But it doesn't happen too much. And you usually know ahead of time what kind of parent you're going to be meeting with, whether or not they're in complete denial or not, right? So it just takes a savvy way to present it. And just kind of letting them know this is just to help your child. This is something to help them to be successful. And then maybe show them some research on how this has helped students, and they don't have to have that SLD label forever. It is something that they can come out of through obviously working hard and working with the supports that they're given, and the parent also helping and supporting. So it can be tough sometimes to have those conversations with parents. Sometimes we do welcome more the concurrent, because it's like, all right, they already know, or they want it. So, and that's also why I'm so kind of strong on saying that we do need to be, as the school, we need to go slow. We need to make sure that we have done everything that we can. And especially in the world of behavior, right? An SLD label is a lot easier to get out from under than an EBD label. So we do need to be really, really careful. You know, we're at this point in the school year and we're already hearing we've tried everything when it comes to behavior. I'm pretty sure that you haven't. But we just really do need to be diligent and ethical when we are presenting a parent or a guardian with the option of more testing to see if the student needs ESE supports. Okay. Good question, though. If we're doing the academics for reading and math, do we need to complete page 2 twice? No, you don't. You could just put both on there. That's fine. Did you want me to open that, Melanie?
It's totally up to you. We used it during the problem solving team meeting, just so obviously we're supposed to do it as a team.
Yeah.
So I made like some highlights and I added a few little things to kind of guide them. So I don't know if people found it helpful, then they can use it.
Yeah, and whatever you all, if you're finding things that help as you're working with your team, please absolutely share that out. Yeah, I still help and I go to meetings and I do things, but you're on the front lines of this every day. So you may have found a trick or something that works better. My Microsoft Word is completely acting up and just spinning. So I'll share it and then it'll be just another thing for the other coaches to take a look at. But yeah, this is being really silly. Or did it open for you, Dave?
Yeah, it looks good, Melanie.
Can you share your screen?
Sure. Let me. Seeing it now?
Oh yeah.
Yep. So she went and input where to view the report and grab specific forms. She's got sentence frames here. Does or does not impede learning. Examples of what data to pull. I like this.
Wow.
So it looks good.
I like it. I like it. Thanks for sharing that. But yeah, make it your own as long as the necessary information is there. So for those of you that don't know, this is the first 2 pages of a longer document that your RCS is going to use to help determine eligibility. So this is the summary of everything that's been done. And then the next 4 pages are questions and things that they go through to help determine the eligibility. That's why this is so important, and your RCS might really hound you for it because it's part of a bigger document that they need. Okay. But we will definitely make sure that Melanie's template gets put in the files.
It's already in there.
Perfect. You're the best.
Yeah, with her name on it, so I get credit.
Yes, of course. I'm not even going to put my sample. That's embarrassing. No. All right. I do want to. Are there any other questions? Anything else that anyone else that has any tips or tricks to what they're doing?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a teacher that came to me that's concerned about a student. She said in talking with the student used to be ESC in Puerto Rico, and is having difficulty in her class. So we looked at her CUNE folder. Parent had, she's new to the school, so the parent had checked yes, ESC, and no for something else, and so, but there was no documentation to even label her as ESC here. And so I called the parent and asked, that I have a teacher that's concerned, and I explained, and so the parent said that she used to get speech and occupational therapy in Puerto Rico, but they deemed that she didn't need it anymore, so they dismissed her from the program, which is why I guess she's not ESC here. I kind of did an informal meeting this morning with the teachers. They think she still needs that one-on-one with the student. In math, they were saying that she needed that she's not really following directions. In general, what I found out, what I learned was, I think the girl's homesick. There's a language barrier because she only speaks Spanish. But the math teacher still thinks that she needs one-on-one because the teacher speaks Spanish and she can't follow directions. So where do I go from here?
If she doesn't speak English, then yeah, she's probably having a difficult time following directions. So the teachers have, what school are you at? I'm sorry.
Poinciana.
Okay. So there are ESOL supports and things that hopefully she's using in the classroom to help the student. Does the student understand any English?
I haven't had a chance to sit down with the student. I did sit down with the student. She doesn't understand English. I spoke to her the whole time in Spanish. The math teacher is a Spanish teacher. You know, she speaks Spanish as well, and she says she explains everything, you know, directions and stuff to her in Spanish.
Okay.
But she's still not clicking with the student.
Okay, so we're not going to give a student a one-on-one is a very intensive like thing to give someone. So she needs math interventions. I don't know what that looks like at Poinciana High School, but you know, get a baseline, see where her skill deficits are. One of the things I think we understand with math, it builds upon itself, and it could get to a point where a student is at a certain age and they're just frustrated, right? Because maybe they need to learn basic elementary facts and it just gets them frustrated. So, and math can be a complex thing just to even understand. So I don't know. Hopefully the teacher isn't implying that she's being willfully disobedient and just not following directions.
No, they said that her behavior, she's well behaved. She's very quiet. She's very shy and timid.
Okay.
So she doesn't really speak in class. So this is not a behavior issue with this student.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording.